Hello and welcome to this week's edition of iTorah. This week I should like to discuss something which I think we contemplate and think about from time to time: our mortality and the limits of the human lifespan. Is there a limit to a human lifespan? What does science say? And what does the Torah say? And I think here we'll find an interesting interface between Torah and science. For decades now, we've come to expect that science will constantly create new frontiers, that what was impossible yesterday becomes possible today, and even expected tomorrow. So it would appear too that when it comes to lifespan, we know that over the last several decades, in fact the last couple of centuries, that lifespan has been increasing. Is there a possibility, perhaps, that it will go on increasing forever? But before we actually address that question, I should like to ask, or deal with, rather, another question which I, and I suppose other rabbis as well, are confronted with from time to time. People look into the books in Genesis, the first Parashiot, Parashat Breshit, Parashat Noach, and we read there of extraordinarily long lifespans. Adam himself lived till 930 years. And of course we have the very old Methuselah. So is it in fact possible to accept statements such as these when we patently know that no human being that we're aware of has ever lived anything close to that long? And because of this question, many people dismiss the stories of the Bible as being impossible, improbable, the stuff of myths. And of course, once you dismiss one aspect of the Bible, it doesn't take a very long bow to dismiss many others as well. Well, I'd like to point out that the question is not a modern question. The question, in fact, has been asked by our sages, the early commentators, those who are known as Rishonim, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And interestingly, the Ramban, Nachmanides, gives an explanation, and he says, listen, it's impossible to compare lifespans today to the way they were in the pre-flood era, the antediluvian era. And he says the reason is because conditions of earth were dramatically different. What was possible in the pre-world flood is simply not possible today. Conditions, atmospheric conditions, geological conditions, condition of the human body, was dramatically different in those days. And therefore it was possible for people to live very long. And he points out that after the flood is when we see the dramatic decrease in human age. And even those who lived long after the flood, he attributes to the fact that they were born before the flood and therefore still had the genes, so to speak, of the antediluvian age within their system. But that didn't apply to their descendants. Now, people say, well, it's very easy to say, is that also another Bovamais? Is that another, a tall tale? And I often answer, and I say, hey, listen, most people today, I would say everyone today, accepts the notion of dinosaurs. No, where are the dinosaurs today? Why are there none of these huge creatures which science tells us once inhabited the world? And the answer there too is very simple, and science explains it. That conditions in early Earth were so dramatically different to what they are today that it was only then that it was possible for the existence of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, in fact, are simply impossible today because conditions on Earth are so dramatically different. And so, therefore, science too postulates this difference in conditions on early Earth, which led to certain creatures being alive then which are extinct today. And the same thing Torah argues, or our commentators argue, in terms of human age, that conditions on Earth were once dramatically different. However, after the flood, we read in last week's parasha that V'haya yamav me'ev esrim shana. It's now possible for a person to live only till approximately 120 years. And I often say to people, look, you're very quick to ask questions based on science, questioning the authenticity of Torah. But how do you like this? The Torah already predicted thousands of years ago that the human lifespan in the post-flood era is only 120 years or thereabouts. We know that it's thereabouts because Moses himself lived 120 and his siblings lived to 123, 125. So the 120 is approximate, but there is this 120 notion. And here I'd like to point out that we know that the limit as far as records are concerned of human life is 122 and a half years. So how's that? Almost exactly what is predicted by the Torah itself. And this was by a French woman by the name of Jean Calmert, who died at 122 and a half years in 1997. Just an interesting anecdote about Calmert. She, at the age of 110 years old, she was visited by a friend, and as they were parting, the younger friend said to her, look, I hope we'll still be able to meet this year. So Jean Calmert says, why not? You look pretty healthy, don't you? So she was a very healthy woman at the age of 110. In fact, she only gave up smoking at the age of 117 because she felt that she'd better start looking after her health. So we now, and it's documented, know that the age of the human being, or longest recorded age of human beings, is about 122 and a half years. Is this just chance? Or is there some kind of science behind this? Well, interestingly, there's what we know as the Hayflick limit. This was discovered by a scientist in the University of California, San Francisco, Leonard Hayflick, about 50 years ago, in which he explains that there is a limit to how many times cells are able to divide. And once cells reach that limit, and it's different for every species, they can no longer divide. Now, what's the significance of this? Significance of this is because we are living in constantly renewed bodies. In other words, the body I have today is not exactly the body I had 6 months ago. Rather, the cells which I had 6 months ago divided. They themselves disintegrated, but they divided, created new cells, duplicating the old cells, and therefore I look like I was 6 months ago, but I'm not really 6 months ago. So when this division of cells finally ceases, then the body is not able to perpetuate itself any longer. And there is a limit to that. Now, this is a pretty daunting notion, that even if we get rid of all sorts of disease, of cancers, of heart conditions, of strokes, blood conditions, even after all of that, there is still actually a limit of human life. As predicted by the Bible, 120 years, and as now verified by science as well. Is this good or bad? Well, an interesting point here. In Genesis it says as follows: on the sixth day after man was created, V'hinei tov od, it's very good. Not just good, but it's very good. And the Medrash says, well, every day it says it's good, but today it says very good. What was actually very good? What was unique about mankind being very good? And the Medrash says something very interesting. The Medrash says, you know what's very good? The fact that he's going to die. It's very good. Why? The reason is because if you were going to live forever, you would never value the day. You'd always be pushing things off the next day, the next day, the next day. I think everyone who's got a computer understands that you can never have enough hard drive space. No matter how much you have, you keep on spreading it out. When a person has limitless time, you never get anything done. You keep on spreading the work out. The work, in fact, takes the amount of time that you have. The more time, then the less efficient you are. So what a limited lifespan does is it forces us to focus. It forces us to get round to the things and to take serious the things which are really important to us. It shows us that time is limited. And because time is limited, I'd better squeeze as much as I can out of every day. Do as much good as I can every day. Experience as much of God's world as I can every day. change.